Every time I hear one of the, even part of the speeches of these friends, as serious it is, I can't help but almost cracking up. It was like, goodness, can somebody whack you? And Job's feeling the same way. Quite a challenging situation for him when you are expecting friends to come and comfort you, and yet they add to your trial. That's a real shock to the system. So one of the reasons we're studying this is certainly so that we can become those who comfort those who are challenged and the difficulties that we all are going to go through. And the worst thing that can happen is we add to their pain and their suffering by how we respond. And obviously, with this whole huge section of the Lord writing for us what these men said and how Job responded, this is a great lesson for us in that regard. It's also a lesson for us with Job himself and what he is going through. Obviously, Job doesn't know something we know. And I was telling my brother yesterday afternoon, by the way, side note, he is here in town and in Vanderbilt Hospital. He thought maybe he felt well enough to come out and visit his daughters and grandchildren, and he didn't get here very long, and everything went south. So he's been admitted to the hospital there. We just got back from seeing him, and he's got 4 IVs going into him, and doing better. The good news about this, Vanderbilt doctors have think they've discovered some things that are going to help him. I told him, I said, right in front of the doctor, I said, well, that's what you get for going to that kooky California medical system, there you are. So at any rate, he's got good spirits as usual, knows what he's facing, but certainly remembering in prayer. But anyway, I was telling Mark yesterday, isn't it nice that we know what Job didn't know? We know that God had not deserted Job. We know that God was there with him and cared about him, and that's something Job didn't know. And that more I think about that, I think what a challenge that is. By the way, thank you for your good comments about the lessons on the gospel. I have at least a couple of more that I have outlined and planned. One is a trigger off of a request that Elizabeth had about what was preached to the Ethiopian eunuch as he began from the passage of Isaiah. Thought it was a great idea and fit right into what it means to preach the gospel. So we'll be doing that in the next lesson, Lord willing. And we're going to talk about what God means when he refers to bringing us to glory. We always think about the glory of God, which is obvious that we want him glorified, and he is glorified in everything. But how does that affect us, and how are we brought to glory? And this is what the kingdom again is about. It's what the gospel is about, is bringing us to glory as well, which is something that I hadn't thought a lot about. I mean, you see it, you read it, you know what it says, but what does it mean? So that will be on the docket as well. I hope you look forward to that. So anyway, we'll look then at the second round of speeches tonight, beginning with the speech of Eliphaz. Eliphaz the Temanite, and if you're visiting with us on Sunday evening, we do this as a semi-type of class situation, Bible class, so it's interactive. I'm not just going to preach. So I'm going to ask you the first question. Eliphaz the Temanite, who did he descend from? Teman. Esau, very good. We know that much. Teman, from Esau, that's right. So if you go back to Genesis chapter 36, you would get the genealogy of Esau, and Teman would be in that genealogy. Anyway, that gives you a little idea of the background of this particular man. All right, so Eliphaz then, as was just read for us, the first part of this, is now answering Job He's not going to tell him anything new, but he's going to heap some more pain on him. and as Job is realizing, as he will point out in one of his replies, I can understand now that that's your job, just to heap it on me, and you're not going to give up. You're just going to keep right on doing that. So as we look at this second speech, the first thing we're going to notice is that Job's words, in his argument, Job's words prove he's a sinner. Now, I thought that was interesting. Job's words, you're proving. Notice all the ways that he talks about his words. In verse 2, he of course accuses him of windiness, windy knowledge. You're just a big blowhard. You fill your belly with the east wind. If you're living in that part of the country and you think of the east wind, what would that bring? What would the east wind bring? Yeah, it's coming off the desert, and it's destructive, and it's harsh, and it's hard. It would be like living in the panhandle of Texas and getting the norther, as they would call it there, and the wind coming down from the north. It's very harsh, very hard, and he just says, you're just destructive. You're just a big blowhard, and that's all there is to it. So you'll notice how many times then that he refers to his speech. Verse 3, your argument is unprofitable talk. Verse 4, he says, you do away with the fear of God, you hinder meditation before God. Verse 5, your iniquity teaches your mouth, you choose the tongue of the crafty. Verse 6, your mouth condemns you. On in verse 6, your own lips testify against you. So notice his argument. He concludes that Job is wicked based upon Job's words. Now, they've been calling Job a wicked man all this time because he's suffering. And if you're suffering, you got to be wicked. So now he says, well, here's evidence of your wickedness, all the dumb things you say. So as I wrote down, basically what you're saying, Eliphaz, is because you disagree with us, then that makes you wicked. So you can see the arrogance, the confidence that all three of these friends think they have got the answer, and any other answer is ludicrous. You just, in fact, by saying there's another answer, it just indicates how wicked you are to disagree with the lofty us, is basically how he's approaching that. So that's his start there in the first 6 verses. And you know, if you put yourself in Job's situation, immediately you've just had another 2x4 hit you in the head. He just starts out with, let me just tell you what a jerk you are, and then we'll go on from there. And that's exactly what he does. Okay, so then the next section here would be verses 7 through 16. And here's where Eliphaz asks Job a number of rhetorical questions, rebuking him for not listening to them. So in each case, you're not listening to us. Now, is Job listening to them? He replies to them. He's hearing what they say, but he disagrees. And so this is what just infuriates them. This is a very, very simple conclusion, Job. You're suffering like nobody else suffered. You're obviously a big sinner. This wouldn't happen to somebody who was a good, righteous person. But what do we recall from Job chapter 1? Job is blameless. Job is there's no one like him on the face of the earth who fears God and does righteousness. And yet here are these friends saying, you're obviously the worst guy that's ever lived. So there's the struggle that Job is going through. Look at some of the points that he makes, beginning in verse 7. Are you the first man who was born, or were you brought forth before the hills? You think you're like Adam, who's been around forever and just knows everything? That seems to be what he's saying here. Are you the only one around? You think you were born before the mountains were even made? So you see that. Verse 8, have you listened to the counsel of God, and do you limit wisdom to yourself? So, have you listened to the counsel of God? Would Job like to listen to the counsel of God? So who does the friend think the counsel of God is coming from? Him. So here's again this same hypocritical contradiction in the previous speeches. You heard Job wanting this, and you heard the friend saying, God is just beyond knowing. He's so deep, he's so far off. But of course we know what he knows. We can tell you all about him. So it's just so contradictory and hypocritical. Do you limit wisdom to yourself? Now, has Job been teaching them, or what has Job been doing? I would say he hasn't been teaching them a lot. What has he really been doing?
Responding to their terrible friendship.
Yeah, he's responding to their terrible friendship. That would be one thing. And he's asking a lot of questions. Job knows he doesn't know what's going on. Job admits he doesn't know what's going on. He is dying to know what's going on and believes he will die without knowing what's going on. This is his struggle, trying to find out answers. And it's interesting to me that they keep whacking on him as if he's telling them all kinds of things he knows, and what he's actually doing is saying, this is the condition, I don't get it. And I wish I could talk to God and know what's really happening. It's killing me that God is an adversary to me, that God isn't on my side. I can't stand this. This is the worst thing ever. So you're seeing those sorts of things. And then verse 9 and 10, what do you know? Let's see, wait a minute. I'm not quite ready for that. He says, what do you know that we do not know? What do you understand that is not clear to us? Both the gray-headed and the aged are among us, older than your father. Well, wow. So Eliphaz and maybe Bildad are older than his dad. So these are, let's say, old guys. They've been around a while. Kind of typical that an older person would say, you're just not listening. I've been there. I know this. I've got a lot of experience. I've got more experience than you. Wisdom is not necessarily limited to old people. You can have older people who have simply grown for the first year of their life and then done that and been there, and 80 years later, they haven't grown any more than that. So 80 times 0 is still 0, and so it doesn't necessarily mean that because you have lived a long time you have wisdom, and especially in this particular situation. You're looking at it going, yeah, Proverbs would tell us we want to go to the experience, we want to learn from the experienced people. But on the other hand, it doesn't mean that an older, experienced person is always right. And those of us who are older need to understand that. We need to open our ears and our hearts and realize that knowledge does not, or wisdom certainly does not end with us. Notice then in verse 11, he says, are the comforts of God too small for you, or the word that deals gently with you? What do you think about that? What's he saying? See what Eliphaz is suggesting? What'd you say, Julie?
He's saying we are dealing gently with you.
I know. If this doesn't crack you up, what is it too small for you that we comfort you and we deal gently with you? Goodness, if you're dealing gently with us, What would it mean if you were dealing harshly with me? It's again, they are not seeing themselves as they should, and they're not recognizing what they're saying. And he says, why does your heart carry you away, and why do your eyes flash? They can probably see Job just so frustrated with him. He says, what's he getting all about? Verse 13, that you turn your spirit against God and bring such words out of your mouth. So if you turn your spirit against us as friends, then you're turning your spirit against God. So you see how they lift themselves up and place themselves in that situation because they believe they're so sure. Verse 14, Eliphaz says, what is man that he can be pure? Or he who is born of a woman that he can be righteous? Behold, God puts no trust in his holy ones, to be his angels, and the heavens are not pure in his sight. How much less one who is abominable and corrupt, a man who drinks injustice like water? Okay, make a couple observations from that. What has Eliphaz just said there? Jared.
He's making a lot of bold claims that he really doesn't know anything about. In verse 15 and 16, about it, how does he know what God puts his trust in or not?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you have the idea, if even his holy ones, even his angels are not perfectly pure and everything, how much more you who are, as he calls him, an abominable, corrupt man who drinks in iniquity just like it's water, just sucks it down and all this, and so how much more you? So, again, has Job ever claimed to be perfectly pure or righteous? Of course not. He simply, the only thing Job is saying is, I haven't done some big rebellious thing against God for this to happen, as they were suggesting. But he's never suggested. In fact, he said to God many times, show me where I'm wrong. I'm glad to listen. That was not the point. But you can see again, he makes an exaggeration here about the situation. And so you're just amazingly terrible person, Job, and I can't explain how terrible you really are, except you just drink it in like water, something else. Okay, and then you go to verse 17 to 35, the last part, his three-part sermon, as we would say. The last part of it is, I just summarized as Eliphaz saying, let me go over this again one more time with you, and maybe you'll finally get it this time. And so you can imagine these guys, they look at Job, and remember what Job looks like right now. I mean, it is a horrifying scene. If you've ever known somebody and you haven't seen them for a while, and then they get sick and go through a lot of terrible things, and then you go see them and you haven't seen them for a while, a lot of times you're just completely shocked. It's like, whoa, man, what has happened to you? Look at, it's your body has been ravaged by this illness that you have had. It's a shocking thing. Well, with Job, that's what it looks like. And so the friends look at him and then begin to describe what an evil person would look like if they turned against God, and describe him. So, you know, my goodness, can you get a little more inventive than this? I don't know. So let's just take a look at this whole section here. He says in verse 17, I will show you, hear me, and what I've seen I will declare, what wise men have told, without hiding it from their fathers. What's his first mistake right there? First mistake, how he starts. I'm going to tell you what. Basis of his argument. Yeah, I'm going to tell you what I've seen. I'm telling you my experience. That's not the end all of truth. Your experience can be limited. Your experience may not cover everything that is going on here. So he just starts saying, I'm just going to tell you again. Here's my experience. I'm older than you. You should understand this. So first mistake right there. So verse 19, to whom alone the land was given, and no stranger passed among them, talking about with the fathers, etc. Verse 20, the wicked man writhes in pain all his days, through all the years that are laid up for the ruthless. Dreadful sounds are in his ears, and prosperity the destroyer will come upon him. He does not believe that he will return out of darkness, and he is marked for the sword. He wanders abroad for bread, saying, where is it? He knows that a day of darkness is ready at hand. Distress and anguish terrify him. They prevail against him like a king ready for battle. All those things right there, Job has complained about. He's complained about every one of those. And Eliphaz goes, simple. This is what happens to wicked people. You should know this. So then, verse 25, because he has stretched out his hand against God, well, here's the reason you've rebelled against God, and defies the Almighty, running stubbornly against him with a thickly bossed shield, because he has covered his face with his fat and gathered fat upon his waist. What's that mean? Talking about getting fat, but how did he get fat? Nah, he's taken his prosperity and his wealth and just filled himself, and ate rich food and got fat on it, and so he's using that as a picture. So this is what he's done. Ho ho ho, and he's just this big person like this. And because verse 28, he now has lived in desolate cities and houses that none should inhabit, which were ready to become heaps of ruins. He will not be rich, and his wealth will not endure, nor will his possessions spread over the earth. So he's gone from somebody who was very, very wealthy, ate high on the hog, and then turned around, and now he's living in a place where nobody should have to live. So, Job, if you want to argue that your wealth indicated anything, that's temporary, short-lived, and what has happened is now it's all been taken away from you, and God is repaying you for the things that you have done. And so, going on in verse 29, he will not be rich, his wealth will not endure, nor will his possessions spread over the earth. He will not depart from darkness. The flame will dry up his shoots, and by the breath of his mouth he will depart. So bottom line, this is the end for you. This is what's going to happen because you won't repent. And now a little urging. Verse 31, let him not trust in emptiness, deceiving himself, for emptiness will be his payment. It will be paid in full before his time, and his branch will not be green. He will shake off his unripe grape like the vine, and cast off his blossom like the olive tree. For the company of the godless is barren, and fire consumes the tents of bribery. They conceive trouble and give birth to evil, and their womb prepares deceit. All right, so very simply, I've told you again what's going to happen to you, and it's very clear it's happening to you, and you won't repent, so just be aware. That's the end of you. You're just a worthless, hopeless, wicked individual is what you are. And by this time, Job is going, this is hilarious. And he's going to answer and say, sure wish you'd just keep it to yourself. I don't need all of this. So Job's answer, part 1, chapter 16. And notice first off these first 5 verses in which Job addresses them. So Job answered and said, I have heard many such things. Miserable comforters are you all. Shall windy words, they've accused him of having windy words, shall windy words have an end? Or what provokes you that you answer? I also could speak as you do. If you were in my place, I could join words together against you and shake my head at you. I could strengthen you, and the NIV puts in there the word but I would strengthen you with my mouth, and the solace of my lips would assuage your pain. Okay. What a couple of things that Job says here to them. What do you see interesting here? Go ahead, Em.
So comforting.
What?
So thank you. That was so comforting.
Yeah, thank you. I just really appreciate that. Was so comforting. Yeah, a little bit of irony going on here, isn't it? Okay. Yeah. What else?
He's also accusing them of what they accused him of being windy.
Yeah, being windy. You're accusing him of the exact same thing.
He says he wouldn't do that.
What'd you say, Glenn? Go ahead.
I think Julie was going to say, but it's like I wouldn't have treated you that way.
Yes. Yeah. That's.
Encourage
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. You have been horrible comforters. If you think you're comforting, you are so wrong. And if I were in your position and you were in my position, I would have given you solace. I would have taken care of you. I would have spoken comfort to you. I'm just not understanding why you would do this. And when he says there, you know, in verse 3, what provokes you to answer? I mean, really, you've made your point. What provokes you to continue to answer this? Don't you love in verse 4? If I were in your position, I could shake my head at you. So you're getting, now you're getting a little picture of what's going on, where the friends are shaking their head at him and waving their finger at him and demeaning him in every way. And so it's a real sorry situation. All right, then Job goes on from there, and he makes then his complaint that God has destroyed him who once was the one who comforted him. And let's notice how he speaks about God. So here's what I want you to figure out when we read this section. I want you to figure out what is Job's viewpoint of God and what God is doing here. I mean, what's his basic, we would say today, what's his theology? How's he looking at this situation in regard to God? All right, so verse 6, he says, if I speak, my pain is not assuaged. And if I forbear, how much of it leaves me? So it doesn't matter whether I speak or I don't speak, the pain is still there. Surely now God has worn me out. He has made desolate all my company. He has shriveled me up, which is a witness against me, and my leanness has risen up against me. It testifies to my face. So you can see his leanness, meaning all the weight he's lost. He has torn me in his wrath and hated me. He has gnashed his teeth at me. My adversary sharpens his eyes against me. Men have gaped at me with their mouth, and they have struck me insolently on the cheek. They mass themselves together against me. God gives me up to the ungodly and casts me into the hands of the wicked. I was at ease, and he broke me apart. He seized me by the neck and dashed me to pieces. He set me up as a target. His archers surrounded me. He slashes open my kidneys and does not spare. He pours out my gall on the ground. He breaks me with breach upon breach. He runs upon me like a warrior. I have sewed sackcloth upon my skin and have laid my strength in the dust. My face is red with weeping, and on my eyelids is deep darkness, although there is no violence in my hands, and my prayer is pure. Okay, tough situation. But what do you see there that would indicate the way Job sees God so far and sees this whole situation? What'd you say, Allison? Unjust. Good word. Yeah, this is just not right. All of this has happened, and yet verse 17, there's no violence in my hands. My prayer is pure, meaning unhypocritical. I just don't get this. So you can imagine what he's saying then to the friends and what he's saying to the universe. is none of this makes sense. And you guys keep thinking it makes sense, but it doesn't make sense because I haven't done what you've said, and yet all of this is happening to me. All right? How does he see God and him in their relationship? What are some of the words that are used there?
Opponents, enemies.
Yes, an enemy, an adversary. Now, we've said this before, but just consider, this is like King David finding out that God's not on his side. For any person who's godly, for every Christian, what's the worst thing that could happen to us? Is to think that God is our adversary, that we're not right with God. You just can't go to bed. You can't go to sleep. You can't handle it. You would just die to have, if that separation were there. So Job is almost close to making the mistake of the friends. He knows he hasn't done wrong for this to happen, but on the other hand, since it's happening, he's concluding that God must be his adversary for some reason, and he can't figure that out. So you can see the struggle that he's going through to try to figure out his own theology. What am I supposed to understand here? Yeah. Oh, the adversary? Yeah. Good point. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, but he's not thinking of Satan. He's just thinking that God has taken this stand here. And so, it's just really, really difficult for him to understand how this would really take place or happen. So then he calls upon, verse 18 here, he's going to plead to the earth. He's pleading to nature, basically, to remember what's going on. O earth, cover not my blood, and let my cry find no resting place. Okay, you remember when Cain killed Abel? What did God say to Cain about his blood? Yeah, cries out to him from the ground. Right, cries out to him from the ground. And so what he says here, he says, don't cover my blood. This is not right. I want justice. I want to be avenged of this. These crazy friends are accusing me of all kinds of things, and I want this solved at some point, even if it's long after I'm dead. And then verse 19, even now, behold, my witness is in heaven, and he who testifies for me is on high. And this is a tough verse, apparently, for translators to translate. My friends scorn me. My eye pours out tears to God, that he would argue the case of man with God as a son of man does with his neighbor. For when a few years have come, I shall go the way from which all do not return. So I'm going to give you here a few other translations that may help. Christian Standard Bible, my friends scoff at me, and as I weep before God, I wish that someone might argue for man with God, just as anyone would for a friend. So what's he looking for? He's looking for a mediator. We're studying in 1 Timothy chapter 2. We have one mediator between God and man, Jesus. So many of the things that Job will ask for, later we find out that God provides for his people. A mediator, beautiful. In NLT, my friends scorn me, but I pour out my tears to God. I need someone to mediate between God and me, as a person mediates between friends. And New Revised, my friends scorn me. My eye pours out tears to God, that he would maintain the right of a mortal with God as one who does for a neighbor. Please, I need somebody to argue my case. Yay. And God, of course, will one day come to that rescue, and he will be able to have that. All right, big lesson here for chapter 16. This is a perfect example of, in a trial, a severe trial, allowing our feelings to tear us apart. All right? So that's, what do we have left when we're just getting beat to a pulp, when one thing after another happens, just about the time you think one thing is over or one trial is done, another one piles on top of it and then piles on top of it. And pretty soon, you know, we're so confused in our head that our feelings are going all over the place and they begin to just tear at our mind. Are Job's feelings true? Are they accurate? They're not. God is not against him. God does not hate him. None of those things are true. Big warning for us. Our feelings in a trial are often not in line with what is reality, what's really taking place. Job doesn't even know all the facts. He admits that much. He doesn't know, but his feelings have caused him to draw conclusions that are really not so. The feelings themselves are not the truth. We always have to be careful about our feelings because they can be everywhere and they can go everywhere depending on circumstances. Yes, the feelings are real to us and they affect us deeply, but they're not always true. And this is exactly where Job is. So when trials come, we have to remember, yeah, I feel right now that I just don't have any hope. But that's not true. You do. God is there. God is aware. God cares. These are going to be some of the things that Elihu is going to bring to the table. All right. Well, I've mentioned all the things that I just said. Just a list of things that Job has. Feelings not in line with what's true. He doesn't have all the facts. He's allowed his feelings to be his truth. God hasn't left him. God doesn't hate him. God is not uncaring. God is not his adversary. All of those things. It would be nice if he could just put that a list and go, oh yeah, reminder. Wouldn't it have been nice if Eliphaz or Bildad or Zophar had said, Job, I understand. I just can't imagine what you're going through, but let me assure you of these things. Please don't think God is your adversary. That's not the God that we worship or understand. That would have been very, very nice and possibly very helpful. So pain can cause us to exaggerate oftentimes what's really going on. And if you've gone through a serious trial, you've done that. There's just no doubt. We've all done that. And it's tough. All right, let's, chapter 17 is pretty simple, but very profound. So let's look carefully at this in our last few minutes here. You'll notice his feelings again, and this is serious. When I say feelings, I don't mean to marginalize it or minimize it. This is exactly how he feels. My spirit is broken. My days are extinct. The graveyard is ready for me. Surely there are mockers about me, and my eye dwells on their provocation. In other words, I'm right to the edge of death. The graveyard is open for me, and yet, in the meantime, I have to sit here and watch these guys provoke me. All of us at this point would be saying just what Job said. Please give me some peace. Please stop it. Please leave me alone. You're killing me. It's such a sad picture.
To put this in perspective, I think what he's saying is listening to you is worse than dying.
Yes. Perfect. I love it. Yeah. Listening to you is just worse than dying. That's great. I got to put that in my margin here. I love it. That's great. So verse 3, he says, lay down a pledge for me with you. Who is there who will put up security for me? Since you have closed their hearts, now he's talking to God, since you've closed their hearts to understanding, therefore you will not let them triumph. He who informs against his friends to get a share of their property, the eyes of his children will fail. So here is Job's plea concerning his friends. Again, NIV. Do I have it NIV on here? I don't think I did. No, I didn't. Okay, but NIV says, give me, O God, the pledge you demand. Who else will put up security for me? You have closed their minds to understanding, therefore you will not let them triumph. If anyone denounces their friends for a reward, he talks now to them, the eyes of their children will fail. So he's pleading that God will give him a down payment of a future justification. So please, just give me something little that lets me know that one day, even if I'm dead, that one day this is all going to be avenged. This is all going to be made right. Human beings, all of us, hate it when injustice especially affects us. This is just not right. And especially when the pain it goes along with it. And so there is where he is at this. And if these friends are doing this for some earthly reward, he says, let their children all die. Let them fail. That's where they are. Then verses 6 through 9, Job grows stronger and stronger. You can see by his surety of his innocence. He has made me a byword of the people, and I am one before whom men spit. My eye has grown dim from vexation, and all my members are like a shadow. The upright are appalled at this, and the innocent stirs himself up against the godless. Yet the righteous holds to his way, and he who has clean hands grows stronger and stronger. Okay. Condition: people come by and spit on me. Wow. Wow. I don't know that I ever had that happen, but they probably wanted to. People come by and spit on me. My eyes are growing dim from my anxiety. All my members are like a shadow. There's nothing left of me. It's just like I'm almost like a ghost now. And then he says, the upright are appalled at this. So somebody who is righteous and upright is just appalled at this. And the innocent stirs himself up against the godless. They know this is wrong. And then verse 9, he says, righteous people and those with clean hands grow stronger and stronger. If you stand that you know you're innocent, you're going to grow stronger and stronger. You can withstand this. Now that's a little glimpse feeling that he had that's going to disappear rapidly. So in a trial, your ups and downs. At one moment, you're thinking, I got this. This is wrong. God's going to be there. I got this. And then the next minute, you just go, it's worthless. It's hopeless. I've got a chance. And that's what you see here. Whoops, I keep doing that. So verses 10 through 16, the end of this, he says, but you, come on again. Look, he's saying to the friends, bring it on. Come on again, all of you. Just pile it on. And I shall not find a wise man among you. Bring it on, but there isn't going to be anybody that's going to be wise. Verse 11, my days are past, my plans are broken off, the desires of my heart. They make night into day. The light, they say, is near to the darkness. What is the friends saying? How are they evaluating things? Dark is light, light is dark, good is evil, evil is good. Cross-reference, Isaiah 5, verse 20, they call evil good and good evil. And he says, you guys don't even know which way is up. You have no idea. Verse 13, if I hope for Sheol as my house, if I make my bed in darkness, if I say to the pit, you are my father, and to the worm, my mother or my sister, where then is my hope? Who shall see my hope? Will it go down to the bars of Sheol? Shall we descend together into the dust? He says, he used to say, let me die. Now he's saying, if I do, I'll be absolutely forgotten. There's no hopeless. It's all hopelessness. Now, there's a part of a trial. Big lesson. Hopelessness. Strong in the midst of a trial. So what do we do about hopelessness? You go to Romans 5 and take a look at verses 3 through 5 and following verses, but mainly those verses. Romans 5, verse 3. Because of Jesus now, this is the reason this is here. Because of Jesus, He says, not only that. Well, let's read verse 2. Through him we have also obtained access by faith into this grace in which we stand, and we rejoice in hope of the glory of God. Not only that, but we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. And hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us. For while we were still weak, at the right time, Christ died for the ungodly. Job did not have that. Job did not have the knowledge of that one day God would do that. And so it's a beautiful picture of, yes, a trial is going to bring to me more endurance. I need endurance. We all need endurance. And then that endurance creates hope. And that hope does not disappoint, because if the Lord gave his life for us, as he later says in chapter 8, who can be against us? All of those things are needed, and God would bring them about later on. And it's nice to think that today, in that heavenly realm, Job is enjoying that after all the things he's been through. And God would even mention Job in the book of Ezekiel and Jeremiah as one of the great men that have prayed to him and that he loves and cares about. So, beautiful picture. All right, so these, hopefully, this impacts you. I really think that it is important, obviously, if he put this much in the book of Job that we have not studied much, that we urge ourselves then to know God better, to know ourselves better, to be more patient and enduring, and to be more caring for others as they go through trials. So thank you for your participation in this. All right, we're going to sing a song right now, and if there's any way that we can be of help to you, please let that be known. We certainly want to help one another, and if there's anything we can do to help you in your spiritual growth, we would like to do that too. While we together we stand and while we sing.